Hello and welcome to our podcast we're calling The Production Flow of Movies. We want to talk to you a little bit about how many movies are made from start to finish so that we can get a greater appreciation of all the work that goes into making these. So as we begin studying them this semester, we are better able to understand the nuances of them, but also to appreciate where these things have come from. Because you'll hear us say this over and over in class, pretty much everything in a movie is intentional. It doesn't just happen, because this is a big money expenditure in the hopes of making a lot of money, in addition to entertaining a lot of people. And so you got to do some planning to make these things. So we just wanted to expose you to some of the things that go on behind the scenes that you may not be familiar with in ultimately making some of our favorite movies. So first thing we have to do is come up with an idea for a movie. Many films are created from an absolutely original idea. They are just the brainchild of somebody who says, I want to tell this story, and I want to tell it through film. Another common way that movies are formed comes from adaptation. So if we have some sort of original idea, we're probably going to take that idea and then write what's called a film treatment. This is a couple-page summary of the idea and the major plot points in this potential film, and the goal of this is to sell that movie. As a writer or as a director, I probably don't have the millions of dollars just ready access in my pocket that are needed to bankroll this entire production. So I have to sell it to somebody else who's going to help put up the money that we can then make it and then start making money back as people go to watch it. Now, a lot of movies, and probably a greater percentage than we are even aware of, come from that other avenue that we talked about before, which is called adaptation. And this is the idea of taking existing material and transforming it into a movie. And so this does become a new genre. You're taking the written word of, say, Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird, and you're changing it into the movie of To Kill a Mockingbird. But probably 50, 60, maybe 70% of most movies that are out there today have come from previously released material in the form of poems, short stories, novels, plays, that somebody has said, hey, let's put this into a new medium, let's put this into film. And so this is just kind of another way that the ideas go from somebody's brain to the big screen. Eventually, we're going to have to finance this project. As you are watching a lot of films, you will see studio names come across the screen. These are all the different people and groups and companies that have added money into making of this film. We have the big studios like Warner Brothers, Fox, or Universal. We also have the route of independent studios, such as maybe Fox Searchlight or the Weinstein Company, where these people are bankrolling and putting in money to the making of these films, but they might be looking for a different type of film than, say, Universal is. Fox Searchlight is going to be looking for smaller budget movies, maybe niche films, not the summer blockbusters that they know are going to be making bazillions of dollars, but something a little bit more quirky, off the beaten track to kind of propose and move forward different stories that their particular studio likes to support. And just to get a flavor of how much some of these things cost, the latest Pirates of the Caribbean, the At World's End version, cost $300 million to make a couple of years ago. Avatar, $270 million. And The Dark Knight Rises more recently at $250 million to make. So you could see why somebody having an idea of, hey, I want to take this comic book and put it on screen, probably isn't going to have the money completely by themselves. They're going to have to go to the studios, go to other investors, collect the money, sell them on a great story, on a great set of potential sequels, but these are exceptionally expensive. On the flip side, movies can be made for relatively cheap also. Now, some of these you may have seen. Super Size Me, $65,000. First Saw movie, $1.2 million. And Napoleon Dynamite, $400,000. All of these relatively successful at the box office. A lot of people went to go watch them. They made a ton of money because they didn't cost very much to make. So whether you have some sort of original idea, or you're going to adapt something from a previously written text, you have to create a script. And this is going to go through drafts and revisions and final drafts and all kinds of shooting script, intermediate steps of we think this is going to work, and then, oh wait, an investor needs to see this in there, so you have to go back and draft and fix it and revise it and stuff like that. So a couple years ago, we had the pleasure of having director Derek Cianfrance come into our film class to talk about his own development of the movie Blue Valentine. And he was saying that it took him years and years to craft that script. And he just kept chipping away at it and fixing it and fine-tuning it and adding and taking out and that kind of stuff. And then oftentimes he said that some of the actors would just ad-lib stuff and they would use that in the script. So it's not like somebody just sits down and crafts a script in 10 minutes or 2 hours. Other stories are going to take longer to develop, are going to need more support, and going to need more input, are going to need for society to be ready for them, that kind of stuff. We got to go from, I have an idea, to now I've written a script, and then we have to go forward in this process. The next step in that process is what we call pre-production. So this is before we are actually filming anything. We have to take that written script, which is still just written, and we have to decide how are we going to bring this to visual life, where film is a different medium than writing. So who are we going to cast? Who do you think would fit the role of Atticus Finch? Is it going to be some big name, somebody you've never seen before, a child actor, some veteran? Like, what are you going to do? Who are you going to get in there? Who would you want to work with? You got to think about this with your budgeting. Who can you afford? And additionally, who's able? What if you really want this person, but they're already committed to making another movie at this time? Eventually, we're going to have to start storyboarding. And this is taking that script and making those first steps into the visualization process. Because again, we have to make this visual. Oftentimes, people will start storyboarding where they do some direct planning and say, okay, this is how I want this written scene to go. I want it shot from these angles. I want this kind of motion. That's what I'm aiming for. Because you got to plan all the lighting, the special effects, shooting schedule. I mean, what about weather? What if all of a sudden you're expecting snow for some sort of snow-based thing and you don't have snow that season? Do you change locations, move from Colorado to Utah? Or do you put the whole thing on hold for a year? Or do you ship in snow? Tons of choices. You better do some planning if you're going to commit your money and way more other people's money to a process like this. Once you get going and you start shooting, we call this the production period, and you're going to start filming. I would say that most films probably aren't shot in chronological order. You know, the things that you'll see on screen, A to B to C, are probably not shot in that order for a variety of reasons. And think about this. What if we have to have characters age or gain weight, or vice versa? How do we do that? Availability of actors? What if we need to wrap this production within the next 3 weeks because somebody is pregnant and all of a sudden in 3 weeks they're really going to be showing? And so do we shoot around that baby bump? Do we get a different actor from the beginning? What do we do? But once we start going, we have to be relatively efficient or, this thing could drag on forever. Additionally, in the production process, we're going to have what are called dailies. And these are all of the shots that were filmed in one day on location, wherever they're at. They are either viewed right there on the set or they're sent somewhere for review so that somebody can look at this and go, okay, here's what we shot on Tuesday. We have 20 shots of this conversation. We've got 50 shots of this establishing shot of the sunset or whatever we've got going on. What do we need to redo and what's good enough? And if something's not good enough for whatever reason, we're gonna have to redo it, which means more time, more money, etc. Eventually, as you've collected all of the raw footage, you have to do some editing. A lot of films are exceptionally long. A lot of the raw film that people have taken, and now it's probably mostly all digital, the hours and hours of film they have has to be put together into some sort of coherent story and film that will eventually make it to theaters, hopefully. And so we start editing. We take 50 hours of some scene or entire film and we cut it down to a more manageable, about an hour and a half to 2 hours length. And so we start to call that the rough cut, where we have kind of things just generally in order. We probably have to add the digital effects at some point and continue to whittle this down and work on this. And then eventually we get what's called that final cut, which is most likely what's going to be shown to theaters. But then things could always be re-edited later to change things, add things. Oh, you know what? That joke didn't work so well with test audiences. Let's change that. Let's add in some dead space so the laughter can subside before the next line. When you're watching movies, watch the credits. You'll see that there are a ton of people who are there in front of the camera, all the actors and extras and things like that. But please notice the amount of people who are working behind the camera, all the sound people, special effects, and especially the editors. It's unfortunate that oftentimes editing is what is called the invisible art, meaning that good editing is something you don't even notice. And so these people are laboriously working over one little transition to make sure that the visual matches up with the sound, matches up with the story, and nobody even notices. They just notice that Angelina Jolie jumped off a truck and did a somersault into a sailboat or something. But there was somebody who spent hours and hours behind the scenes trying to make that all work in that post-production world. Ultimately, we have to sell this film. We need to have trailers to get these out at other movies to let people know that, hey, in a couple months, we're going to have Iron Man 2 or Titanic 2, Revenge of the Ship or something. We have to let people know that these movies are coming out. And so that starts this massive marketing and media production of getting the word out there that such and such a film is coming out. And so you get TV ads, you get newspaper ads, internet things, trailers on established movies, things coming out on pre-purchased DVDs. We got to get the name out there, and so we have to sell this film. Probably also need to decide how it's going to be released. I would wager that most films don't just walk into an AMC 24 across the nation. Many are going to start at film festivals, which are smaller groups of films that people want to see, maybe on a specific topic or hosted in a certain city, such as Sundance, which is in Park City, Utah. They start off in a limited release, and then if there is popularity, if this gains people more funding, and they can then spend more on marketing, then they might be able to make it to those AMC 24 mass plexes, that kind of stuff. Something else to consider is, when do you release this film? Are we thinking that this is going to be an award winner? If so, then we probably need to release it within the Academy Awards selection time period between date A and date B. It's probably better to release it more toward the ending of that period so it's fresh in people's minds as they go out to vote. We also have to look at the type of movie it is. In the summer, we tend to see big summer blockbuster movies full of action and adventure. They tend to move pretty quickly. If your movie is something slower, say Schindler's List, I'm going to guess that that's probably not going to do really well if released in the summer. That movie just feels like a fall or winter movie. So perhaps you gauge the movie itself and kind of pair that up with when it should be released. Eventually, on some of these bigger names, you're going to have some sort of mass premiere, opening in all theaters on December 1st. And there's usually some sort of big New York or LA premiere where we see the cast and the directors. Everybody's out there looking fancy and selling the movie, building this word of mouth interest for it. And then, of course, as soon as it's out or as soon as people have seen it, there are reviews, people who are critiquing the movie. And they critique from all kinds of different production aspects. Some people just look at sound or the visual or the acting. Some are writing for the New York Times, some for informal blogs. All of that is either good or bad press for the movie. The more flywheel effect it can generate, the more like, hey, did you hear about this? Oh yeah, I totally love that. Oh, I'm going to go see it this weekend. This building of momentum helps sell that movie. And then we get now, with the advent of DVDs and streaming, there are additional things going on with these movies. Back in the day, it was the movie was showing in theaters for 3 months, and then it was gone. You were done. Then it was in the theaters for a couple months, then you could get the VHS tape, and then the DVD, and then you could stream it. Like the day it comes out, you could stream a lot of things on iTunes or rent them through Amazon or whatever. Oftentimes now, DVD production is the goal, whereas many filmmakers know they're going to make money in the theaters, many more know that they're actually going to make more by renting this movie in some way. And so they pump in all of the extras, all of the bloopers, all the outtakes, making unrated editions so they can say, there's dirtier language or there's more nudity or something like that, because they figure they can sell more aside from just showing it in the theater. And something else they've kind of cued into is the pace at which jokes are told. Now, oftentimes, major productions, the jokes come so fast that when you're watching it for the first time in the theater, you don't even catch all the jokes because they're piled on top of each other. You've barely finished laughing at one, and 2 or 3 more are coming at you. They do this intentionally because they know if you didn't catch that joke in the original screening, you're probably more likely to go out and rent it or buy it when it comes out on DVD so that you can catch all of those jokes. And so it's an interesting marketing thing that they want their movie out there in the theaters, but they also know that this is going to be sold in other ways too. Eventually, we have this idea of cross-marketing, where the movie itself is in theaters and some of its paraphernalia or toys or the name of it is being produced in other markets, things like video games or Happy Meal toys or things like that. And we also have the idea of sequels. I think now, at the time that I'm making this podcast, I think we're on Die Hard like 18 or something. We just finished with Rocky 15. You get these franchises where the first movie does well and the expectation is, well, of course you're going to do another one. Let's ride the popularity of Bruce Willis and Die Hard and let's see how much we can milk this for. But you have other things that may or may not lead to sequels, but that's probably always in the back of somebody's mind. How can we make more on this storyline, on this production, with this acting group, that kind of stuff. Another great example of cross-marketing is the idea of the theme parks. I mean, this is a screenshot from the Islands of Adventure at Universal Studios. And if you look at the different parts of that theme park, they're all based on various movies. If you kind of go around clockwise, you've got Superhero Island, where they have things on the Hulk and Captain America, Spider-Man's there. It moves to Toon Lagoon, which are more cartoon-based, moves across the top to Jurassic Park. In the upper right, you see Harry Potter Land or World or whatever. They've made a couple roller coasters. They've recreated Hogsmeade, the little town that they're in. They've recreated Hogwarts, the castle. They've taken the books and made the movies, and now they've got the theme park. So you've got all this great cross-marketing that people who have read the books probably want to go to experience it themselves. People who have been there say, wow, this is great. Oh, I could see the movie. I never heard of that. And so they start buying each other's products. And of course, the prices are ridiculous. Tons of money being paid for the names of these movies, but they're all owned by Universal, so it kind of all goes into that same pot. But what a great way to spread the name of that movie and vice versa. So that's kind of about it for this. Just wanted to give an overview of some of the major steps that go into the production of movies. And just to reiterate, these things don't get made overnight. Probably months, if not years, on some of these bigger productions. Hundreds of people adding their talents and skills to the making of these things in a hope of A, entertaining people, and B, making a lot of money. As we go forward in studying the rest of our semester, some of the intricacies and the analysis tools that we might use to examine the literary, dramatic, and cinematic level of these, please remember how these things are made. It's not just a one-shot deal. There's a lot that goes into it. So thanks for listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to bring those into class. We'll get those taken care of, and we will see you soon. Thanks a lot.